Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul and Screen. In this particular video, I will be doing a review on Tyler Perry's Zatima season number 1, episode number 3 and 4. Let's just get into it. Last video I left off, where Zach basically was having a meeting with the SEC investigator, and I'll pick up right there. For the most part, for those who don't know the storyline, over in Sister, Zach basically met a woman who he went and grabbed her bag, and because of it, she gave him a stock tip as an investment, a stock tip to invest in instead of an actual tip, because she didn't have anything to give him, and he actually went in far over and beyond to help her get her bag back. So she didn't have any money to give him. So what she did is she gave him a tip about a stock to put money on. Zach actually had just come into some money because of an real estate investment situation that he got into, and he put all the money on this particular stock, and he came into a windfall of money as a result. And the SEC is investigating. That happened over in Sisters, and now you come over to Zatima. They are continuing the investigation. So here in Zatima, the investigator comes over, and she actually shows him a picture of the woman who gave him the stock tip, and she's trying to get Zach to admit to his part in it. And so she basically is just like, this is the woman who you met this woman, and she's giving you something, and it was a stock tip, and you basically invested in it. And he's like denying everything, and he's like, no, that's not what happened. She was a customer. I helped her with her bag, and that was it. And so the lady is upset, and she's really just trying to catch Zach up, and Zach ain't falling for it. And so she gets upset because it was without Zach admitting that he did it, she doesn't have a case, because she contacted the other lady to find out if Zach, got the money that way, and the lady is denying it. For those who watch Sisters, she's denying it because Fatima basically threatened her. Like, it was just like, if you tell about Zach, I'm gonna, we're gonna tell your business too, basically. And so, coming back over to Zatima, Zach basically just calls old girl's bluff, because she's like, you better get some lawyers, and I'm gonna call the FBI in to come and get you. And he's like, well, just do it. Like, there ain't nothing I can do about it, because you don't believe me. And so he calls her bluff. She gets up, and basically nothing happens. And she tells Zach that, she's going to go ahead and close the investigation until she can get some more proof. But as of right now, she doesn't have it. And so Zach basically tells her, yeah, I kind of figured that. And she leaves. So when she leaves, you fast forward a little bit into the day, and Fatima is coming home from work, and you can tell she's tired and things like that. And Zach is coming down the stairs, and he's just like, yo, what's up? And she's just like, hey, babe, and she goes over and sits down on the couch to take her shoes off, and he comes over, and he's like, where's my kiss, And she kisses him, but it's just a smooch, and he's like, that's all you got for me? And she's like, I got some more for you later, but for now, that'll do, basically. And he goes, dang, like, you still mad about the whole Belinda thing? So for those who didn't watch last week's or the last video, and she goes, no, I'm not. Like, I'm just really tired. And he's like, oh, okay. So he grabs her feet, and he's like, give me them feet. And so he starts massaging her feet, and he's like, what's going on? Like, and she was like, nothing. She's like, I got to get ready to go get my hair done. And he was like, it looks good to me, as he's rubbing her feet. And for those who, don't know, this is one of those reasons why we love the Zatima couple, because the way that he is so attentive to her, and the way that she rides for Zach, like, this is what a couple does for each other. They balance each other out. They serve, each other's needs, and some of those desires and wants as well. But so he's rubbing her feet, and they're talking about the day, and so she's like, I gotta go get my hair done. He's like, actually it looked good. And she's like, thank you. And then he's like, well, anyway, what happened in my day? And he tells her about the SEC investigation. And she's like, are you like, what? And he's like, no. And so she's like, well, what happened? And he's like telling her, she was coming at me and everything. He was like, but I I killed it, basically. He's like, she couldn't get nothing on me. He was like, and so she basically gonna close the investigation. And so Fatima was just like, oh, cool. Like, he was like, yeah, so we good. And so she was like, oh, cool. And so, while he's, continuing to tell her what happened with the investigation, and he's just giving her details, that there's a knock at the door. And they look at each other because, basically it is the baby mama, or the supposed baby mama, because what they're doing is having her over to, talk about getting a DNA test so that they can prove for sure that Zach is the father of her child. Because basically what happened with him is, for those who are not caught up on the story, is Zach had not even a one night stand. He just basically went to a strip club. He smashed this chick, and apparently she got pregnant. And she's trying to figure out, she's been trying to find him. The baby is now 3 years old. And she basically just found out. She basically put Zach's name on this birth certificate. So she wants some child support. And of course, Zach is like, well, I don't think that's my baby. So until we get some, paternity tests, I ain't giving you nothing, basically. So that's when Fatima went over and basically invited her over and told her to come over to the house so they can get this done and situated. So this is her. Her name is Heather, coming over. So Zach answers the door. Heather walks in, and she has little Michael in her arms. And she comes in, and she's looking, and she kind of come in with a little bit of an attitude too. You want to hold your baby, like that. And Zach is like, he was like, what? She was like, she go, you want to see your baby? And he goes, I see him. And she was like, don't be like that. He was like, don't be like what? And so Fatima was like, I want to hold him. And so Fatima goes over and grabs him. And she walks away towards the kitchen while she's holding him, which is giving Zach and Heather a chance to talk. And basically, Heather is like, I'm not paying for no DNA test. You got all this money, so you can pay for it. And Zach was like, that's fine, I'll pay for it. Just trying to set down some time. And he's like, she was like, well, he yours. He looked just like you. And he was like, nah, he looked like you. And so she was like, he was just basically kind of telling her, when can we do this? And she goes, well, we not doing nothing until you give me the back child support that you owe me. And he was like, what? And she was like, you gonna pay me? And he was like, Fatima. And she was like, no, we not doing nothing. You not getting none of his DNA until you pay me my money and everything. And so Fatima comes back over, and she passes the baby back over to, Heather, and Zach is just like, man, whatever. And so Fatima, passes the baby back over, and she was like, do I need to remind you, don't let me have to put your head through this wall again? And Zach is like, again. And Fatima was looking because she didn't tell him what happened. And she was like, we just had a little talking. So Heather is ticked off, and she's like, oh, you trying to threaten me? I came over here to try to resolve this, and you trying to threaten me? And so she was like, I'm leaving. And so Zach is like, dude, just hold on. And so Fatima's like, no, let her go. And so she leaves, and Zach is like Fatima, just let me handle this. Will you let me do this? And she was like, will you calm down? I already got the DNA. And he was like, what? And she was like, yeah. He was like, you got the DNA? And so, yeah, she goes, yeah. And she pulls out this little Q-tip on DNA kind of kit from her sleeve. And she's telling him to open his mouth. And so she swabs his mouth. And he's like, you got the DNA from the baby? And she's like, yeah, what you think I was doing over there? And he was like, dude, you be on the criminal tip. And she was like, you got to watch me. And so basically she was like, I can take this to my job because we have kind of a partnership with the company who can get us the results within 48 hours or something like that. And so Zach is like, well, cool. I knew he was over there doing something. And she was like, yeah, so don't worry, I got you. And they give each other a little dap, and, they little hand tap. For those who don't know, they have this little hand tap where they, slap each other's hand 3 times. So he did that, and then she goes, okay, well, anyway, I got to go get my hair done. And he was like, yeah. And so she was like, yeah. She was like, what you about to do? And he goes, well, I'm about to go running with Bryce and then kind of catch him up. And she was like, Bryce? And he was like, yeah, and so she had already kind of expressed her concerns about Bryce because she's just like, he's like, yeah, I got to go tell him what happened with the SEC thing. And she was just like, I don't know why. He probably the one who called and told everything. And so Zach is just like, can you let it go? Like, like he a good dude. And Fatima is just like, I don't really know about that. It's just something about him. And I don't really know what it is yet. And Zach is just like cutting her off. He was like, listen, like if you don't even know what it is, you can't put your finger on it. I mean, it's nothing. Like leave it alone. And so she's like, all right, I'll leave it alone for now. Anyway, let me go get my hair done. And so Zach grabs her and he was just like, I don't know what you about to go get your hair done for. I'm just going to mess it up tonight anyway. And she was like, what? And he was like, yeah. And so she was like, stop. So they had this little cute moment. She's like, stop. I got to get my hair done. And so you fast forward into it a little bit more. Fatima gets to the salon and she's walking in and Angela is already there, and then Belinda happens to be there, and she's walking out, and she's like, oh, hey, Fatima. So her and Fatima have a moment, and she's like, oh, what you doing here? And she's like, I told you I'm about to get my hair, a wash and a press today. And she's like, oh, yeah, you did. And she was like, my bad. This is Belinda telling Fatima this, and Fatima, and she's like, yeah, I already told you that. And so Belinda goes, oh, okay. She was like, oh, again, I'm sorry about, yesterday. And so Fatima was like, we good, like, it's fine. So she leaves. And when she leaves, Fatima sits in a chair and she notices that Angela is having a conversation with one of the other stylists. And he makes a comment basically tells that Belinda was just in there talking about Zach and her past sex moment with him. And here's my issue with this. Let me put a pin here. Her and Fatima just made up that morning. You had sex with Zach one time 2 years ago, and you still talking about it. But not only that, it's supposed to be over. Your best friend just kind of gave you some grace for coming at her man and starting stuff. And then you go over to the salon and gossip about it and tell the entire salon that Fatima is dating and with somebody that you had sex with. And then you go so far into explain that, what the details were, to the point where, picking up the episode now, as it comes out, Fatima's like, what are y'all talking about? The guy was like, so yeah, Belinda told us she had your man, like she slept with him. And Fatima is like, what? And she was like, yeah, she told us she had your man, so we know it got something to do with the sex and how's the sex and all that kind of stuff. And so Fatima's like, what are y'all talking about? And so it comes out that Belinda basically was in there talking stuff about the situation. And so Fatima was like, yeah, you know what, fine, yes, she did, but that was a long time ago. It's over, and she knows that I'm with him, And so the hairstylist that's working with Fatima, whose name is Gigi, she goes, yeah, but you do know that, like, she was like really into him, like for real, like. And Fatima was like, yeah, I do know that, but she knows that that's over now and that I'm with him. And so she goes, yeah, but she did say that she liked him and all that kind of stuff. This is Gigi telling Fatima. And Fatima was like, oh, well, that's cool. Like, I'm fine with her. I actually want them to kind of get along. Like, that's my dude. And she's like one of my best friends. And so Gigi goes like, no, hello. I'm talking about she want to FUCK him. And so she was like, nah. Fatima's like, nah, she wouldn't do that. And Gigi was like, okay, I'm just telling you, she was way into him. Like, she was deep into old boy. And so Fatima was like, listen, I just don't really have time for the he say, she say stuff. Like, I don't feel like gossiping about this. That's one of my best friends. She not gonna do nothing like that, So they all kind of move on into, getting their hair done. You fast forward a little bit more into it, and it's like Angela and Fatima are sitting at the under the dryers getting their hair dried, and Angela kind of notices Fatima is like really quiet, and so she was like, you all right? And she was like, I'm good. And she was like, you don't believe none of that, do you? To Fatima. And Fatima was like, no. And she looks at Angela and she was like, do you? And she goes, nah, like Belinda know better than that. He off limits. And so Fatima was like, he sure is. And then she goes, but Fatima goes to Angela, well, you do know how she get when she like get drunk and all that kind of stuff. And so Angela's like, yeah, I know, but she ain't gonna go that far. Like, she know better. And so Fatima was like, yeah, And so they both kind of, quiet. And then Fatima, pause, and Fatima looks to the side. And she goes, where was she going anyway? And Angela was like, I don't know. So she goes, okay. And then you fast forward over to the other side of town where Zach and Bryce are, running and meeting up. And so they stop to catch their breath. And Zach actually takes Bryce over to run at a house that he wants to, invest in. And so he stops and he's like, so he's telling him about the SEC lady and how she came in. And so Bryce is like, cool. So you passed it. That's like basically the biggest part of it. So since you did that, you should be good. And so he's like, okay, cool. And so he was like, look at this house basically. And Zach was like, Bryce is like, is this why you wanted to come over here? He was like, yeah, I told you I'm about to start flipping houses. So I really want to get into this. Like, and so he's like, Bryce is like, cool. Like, I actually know the realtor on this house. Like, I'll connect you guys. And so Zach is like, cool. And so he's like, I just want you to know you looked out for me. So you can't get rid of me now. Like, we boys, like, you was riding for me. And I don't really know what I did to deserve, like, you being in my life and Fatima in this moment. But he just was like saying that he's grateful. So he goes, can we go look at your office, basically, because, Bryce has been telling him about his office and stuff. And so they go over to Bryce's office, which is actually Gary, because Bryce works with Gary. And so they get into the office, and of course it's this big old huge office with this great view of the city. And Zach is just like, yo, man, like, you think I can have this one day? And so Bryce is telling him, yeah, like, man, I think you smart. Like, I definitely think you can have something like this. He was like, but you don't need to have like this type of an office, because like it costs a ton of money for just the view, And so he was like, it's a whole bunch of other places that are just as nice that you can get that, won't cost this much. And so Zach is like, cool, point me in that direction. And so he was like, cool, I'll hook you up. And so they leave. Zach happens to get to the house. And apparently Bryce was handling business, and he had already contacted the realtor who happened to be at the house when Zach was there looking at the house and taking pictures. And Zach pulls up and he's like, yo, like, what you doing? Because he just sees some random person taking pictures of his house. And so he walks up to the lady, and he's like, what you doing? And she was like, oh my goodness, like, this is house. I really gotta list this. And he was like, oh yeah. And she's like, yeah, but I gotta talk to the owner. And she's not realizing that Zach is the owner. And so she kind of looking at him sideways, and she's like, wait a minute, you the owner? And so Zach was like, yeah, you the agent? And so she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she was like, so I'm Valerie. And Zach was like, oh, and he was like, they both kind of said, oh, Bryce, so it doesn't seem like they thought maybe Bryce was going to connect them so quickly or whatever. So anyway, Zach invites her in to look at the house and to talk to her. And so she's walking through Zach and Fatima's house at this point, and looking through. And so she's like, the other place is just like this. And he's like, yeah, it's just like this. And so she's like, this is beautiful. She was like, I can actually like list this and get you like a lot of money if you want to sell it. And he was like, how much? A lot. And she's like 1.4. Now, for those who watch Sisters, they know that he only paid like $400 for it. So, but he tells her, nah, like, me and my lady, we just got here, like, we good. And so she was like, you married? And he was like, nah, but I'm seeing someone and we together. And so she was like, okay. And so she was like, basically, here's my card. Let's talk. Because he told her he wanted to flip some houses. And she was like, definitely, I'll get you some listings and get back with you. As she's getting ready to leave, Belinda literally walks in their house. Now, this is something with the Tyler Perry world or something, is that everybody just be walking in people's house. This man don't like you. You know what I'm saying? And you don't really know him like that. And you just walk in his house. So she literally walks in the house and she's like, oh, who's this, to Zach? And Zach was like telling Valerie, the real estate agent, don't worry about her. Just move on past. Like, she ain't nobody. And so Valerie leaves and he goes to tells Belinda, he's like, Fatima ain't here, so you can go ahead and go. And she was like, I know she not here. She getting her hair done. He was like, okay, cool. So then you can go and wait till she get back, and then you can have a conversation with her outside, but basically telling her you're not welcome in my house. excuse me. And she was like pushing up on him. So she starts walking close and he's like, what you doing? And she was like, I know you like to have sex. And he was like, yeah, but not with you. And she was like, Zach, like, you want me. So she literally starts like seducing him. And so she like jumps on him. She unbuttons her shirt and she's really trying to come on to him. And Zach is absolutely curbing her. Like, he don't want nothing to do with her. He's like, Belinda, stop, like, get off of me. And he's like trying to move his face because she trying to kiss all on him and stuff, and she jumping on him and trying to like literally get him to have sex with her. And so Zach is doing everything he can to stop her, and so he leaves, he gets up and he finally gets her off, and he was like, I'm about to call Fatima. And she's like, she ain't gonna hear you, she under the dryer, and so she ain't gonna be able to hear that. So Zach is like, well, I'll tell you what. So he goes upstairs and he's like, do not follow me. And so she's like, oh, so this is the opposite. So you won't, that mean follow you. So he gets upstairs, and basically when he gets upstairs, he's getting away from her and he's trying to lock himself like behind a door so she can quit following him. And he gets there, and he looks, and Fatima is literally sitting on the edge of the bed with her hair still like wrapped and curled up from the blow dryer. And so he looks up, and then Belinda is coming upstairs, and she's like, come on, baby. I know you want me. And she looks and she sees Fatima, and Fatima kind of looks at Zach, and he's like, baby, just calm down. And so she goes, hey, girl. And so Fatima was like, did she just say, hey, girl to me? Like, she up here in my bedroom trying to seduce my man, and did you just tell me, hey, girl? And so she was like, you know how he is. I was just kind of trying to show you who he is. And so Fatima was like, she was like, you know how he is. And so she was like, no, I don't. How is he? And so basically Belinda is trying to convince Fatima that all this seduction stuff that she was doing and throwing herself at Zach was, she was doing it for her benefit. She was doing it so she can catch Zach in the act and go and tell Fatima. And so she tells Fatima all this, and Fatima's like, oh, really? She was like, how'd you know I was still going to be, how'd you know I wasn't going to be here, or I was still going to be at the salon and stuff? And she was like, well, it takes about 2 hours. So she basically was like, so Fatima goes, so you timed this. And so Fatima not believing anything that she says. Now, remember, these people are best friends. So she know your friend. And if you do have a friend like that, and no shade, you know what I'm saying? It's a whole bunch of different people and personality types out there, but she knows her friend. That's the reason why she asked Angela, do you think she would do something like this? And then she's like, how she get. And so anyway, Fatima is ticked at this point. So she's looking at Zach. She grabs her purse, and Zach is like, nope, you're not going to do it. And so she was like, Zach, give me my purse. For those who don't know, she keep her pistol in her in her purse. And so he's like, he was like, you need to calm down. And she was like, I'm calm. And he was like, no, you're not on the inside. And so Zach, he's like yelling. Belinda's like, you need to shut up. And he's like, Belinda, you need to go. And she was like, And so they start arguing. She was like, I'm trying to show her how trifling you is. And he's like, you got to get out of my house. And so he grabs Belinda, and she's like, get your hands off of me. And he's trying to escort her out of his house. And as they get closer to the stairs, Fatima shoots. And so she shoots, and then she walks over to Belinda because Zach and her both duck, so they miss. And so she's like, I can't believe you shot at me. And she was like, yeah, B, you want to try to come at my man? So she's going full off on Belinda right now. She was like, you want to talk about how trifling he is and this and this. And so they just arguing. And Belinda is just like, man, you've been friends for all these years. Are you going to shoot at me over him? And so, but she leaves, and Zach grabs Fatima and basically kind of like ushers her over to the bed and kind of has to pin her on the bed for her to calm down. And so she does, he gets her to calm down, and you fast forward into the episode a little bit more. He's downstairs cleaning up and letting her, get situated upstairs. And Angela comes knocking on the door, and she's like, I need to talk to Fatima. And he was like, Fatima sleep. You can't go in there. And so she was like, Zach, Fatima been my girl. And he was like, yeah, but your other girl just came in here and broke her heart. So you're gonna have to wait, because I'm not gonna wake her up. So Angela basically starts yelling, Fatima, and Fatima goes, Zach, let her up. So she goes up, and she starts talking to Fatima about what happened. And so Fatima is explaining to her everything that Belinda did. And so Angela is like, well, Fatima, she told me she was just doing this to show you that he who he is. And so Fatima was like, yeah, she tried to tell me that trifling stuff too. Like, I don't believe that. She was like, I was sitting up here and I heard everything. And so she's like, wow. And she was like, I'm so sorry. This is a mess. And so she, of course, Fatima is like crying, and she's just like, I've been here for her, and she gonna do this kind of stuff to me. And so they have their friend moment, and basically Fatima tries to tell her, like, you're not going to get me to change my mind about this whole Belinda thing. Me and her done. Like, I'm done with her. I ain't got time for that. And so, they continue to have their conversation. While they're upstairs having their conversation, Zach and Bryce, who came with Angela, are downstairs, and they're coming in from a conversation on the deck where they were just talking, and basically Zach was catching him up on things, and, Bryce is basically telling him, like, dang, like, man, like, but Fatima, like, she can't be shooting at people and stuff. And so Zach was like, like, anyway, like, whatever, like, I know Fatima, and, she carried her pistol, but, I really can't afford to mess up. And so, they walk in the house, and Angela comes back downstairs, and she apologizes to Zach for assuming that he was wrong and everything like that. She was like, I misjudged the situation. And so she leaves. Zach goes upstairs. And he has this so cute moment with Fatima where he goes up to her, and he was like, big spoon, little spoon. And she was like, little spoon. So he gets up and he gets behind her, and he's just holding her, as she, like, he understands this like really breaks her heart. And so he's holding her, and he's like, babe, I don't want to do nothing to hurt you, and I'm sorry. And she's like, Zach, this is not your fault. And he was like, yeah, but if I wouldn't have did nothing with her in the first place. And so she was like, again, it's not your fault. You didn't know me then. And so they have this conversation, and he was like, babe, you can't be shooting at people and stuff. And she was like, I know, I'm sorry. And so he was like, promise me you won't do it again. And she was like, I promise I'll try. And he goes, like, look at me. And he goes, I'm sorry. And he basically tells her, I'm going to do better. And she was like, we both need to do better, that kind of stuff. And they just kind of continue hugging it out through the night. And so you fast forward into the next further on to the episode, and it's now the morning, and Zach is cooking breakfast for Fatima. She comes downstairs in her workout outfit, and he's like making her breakfast. He has a conversation with the realtor where she says she may have somebody who wants to look at the house next door. And so he was like, cool. So he's telling Fatima this while Fatima's pouring her something to drink. And he's like, what you about to do? Go, like, running? And she's like, yeah, I got to go run and clear my head because, I can't take a vacation right now. And he was like, I could take us on vacation. She was like, really? Where are we going to go? He was like, I could take us to Florida. And she was like, Florida? She looked at him like, boy. She was like, I don't want to go to Florida. Like, I want to. So she started, talking about, I want to wake up and smell the med. And, so she's talking about, like, overseas, right? Like, and this is truly a Crystal thing, by the way, for those who don't know. Crystal vacations out of the country. So anyway, taking it back to Zatima. So he's like, I can't go out of the country because, his record. And so she's like, oh yeah. So he's like, but I could take us to Florida. And she's like, or I could see you when I get back. And so he's like, dude, don't be playing with me. So anyway, she was like, I gotta go run. And he was like, well, I'll go with you. She's like, nah, don't go with me. And he was like, why you don't want me to go with you? And she was like, because you ain't going to be able to keep up. And he was like, girl, please. So he goes running with her, and they run and stuff. They get to the park, and she is like beating him. She's like, Zach, I told you that I was, you ain't going to be able to keep up. But she's like, listen, I can't wait for you. I got to go. I got to go to work. And he's like, cool. So she leaves him basically. And, it's this woman who runs past him, and Fatima turns around and watches Zach look. And she was like, I'm watching you. And he was like, nah, I thought it was the sun, because this lady had on this big, like, yellow kind of outfit. And so Fatima turns around and starts running again. She actually runs literally into her ex. And he's like, Fatima. And she's like, oh my goodness. And she's like, hey. And so she tries to run past him, but he's blocking her. And she's just like, Ian. And he's like, I still love you. And she was like, Ian, we done. Like, so they stop, and he's having this conversation. He's like, I'm sorry. Like, I want to take you to dinner and talk about everything. And she's like, we don't got nothing to talk about. Like, she was like, did you forget that you dumped me and went and married another woman like the next weekend or whatever? And he was like, I know, and I'm sorry. She was like, so get the F away from me. And so he's like, I just really want to take you to dinner and talk some things through. And she was like, no, I ain't gonna be able to do that. She was like, because my man wouldn't appreciate that. And while she's talking. Zach had just finished a phone call where he was talking to Bryce, saying that he was going to meet him somewhere. And Zach walks up to Fatima. He's like, "Hey, babe, what's up?" And so Fatima's like, "Hey." She was like, "Hey, babe, like, do you remember I told you about the dude who broke up with me and then went and married another chick like in a few days later?" And he was like, "Yeah." She was like, "This is him." And he was like, "Oh, okay, cool, cool." And she was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah, that's good." And she was like, "That's good. Why is that good?" And he was like, "Yeah, because, basically, if his because he messed up, so now it gave Zach the opportunity basically to meet Fatima." So she was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." And she was like, "Well, anyway, he is out asking to take me to dinner." And he was like, "Dinner?" And so Zach goes, "Dinner?" And she goes, "Yeah." And he goes, No, we not doing that." And so Fatima goes, "You heard my man." And they said like in unison, "We not doing that." And so she goes, "Okay, I'm out of here, Bobby." And she calls him out his name, and Zach basically hits Fatima, but he's like, "Yeah, nah, man, that's mine." Like, and so it was so cute. Like, Ian definitely felt the shade on that one. So fast forward, basically Bryce, and Zach are at this place, and Bryce is showing Zach this new a spot where they can absolutely kind of start the real estate investment company. He tells Zach, "I'm gonna go into this with you, but this is the spot." And Zach was like, "Cool." And he was like, "What's the matter with you?" And so Zach starts telling Bryce, "We ran into Fatima's ex today, and you can tell it was still something there and that kind of stuff." And he was like, "Yeah, it could have been last night too." And so Bryce was telling Zach that, and Zach was like, "Yeah, that's true." He was like, "Anyway, just talk to her, man." And so he goes, "All right." So you fast forward back to the other side of town. Fatima is now at work, and she's meeting up with Angela, and Angela is thinking that she's upset because of the Belinda stuff still. And so, they go to the bathroom to get some privacy and stuff like that. And she goes, "I just ran into Ian." And she was like, "Oh, snap." And she was like, "Yeah." And she was like, basically telling Angela that she still felt something. She was like, "I thought I was over him." She was like, "But something happened. Like, I just felt him like all over me." And, Angela's like, "Now that's a problem. Like, do you want him or no?" And she's like, "No, I really don't. Like, I'm actually really happy with Zach." And so she was like, "But he want to go to dinner." And she was like, "Well, you should go." And she was like, "You think I should go?" And she was like, "Yeah." She was like, "So Zach can kill me?" And so Angela goes, "Well, no, if y'all relationship is as solid as you say it is, just tell him." And she was like, "Well, maybe you're right." So they hug it out, and she leaves. Angela tries to talk to her about Belinda, but Fatima shuts it down. She was just like, "No, I'm not doing that right now." So she's like, no. So when she leaves, she happens to go out, and it cuts to kind of her coming out of the break room. And when she's coming out, the receptionist goes, "Hey, Fatima, you got a visitor." And she looks over, and it's Ian, and Ian is sitting there, and she goes like, "What are you doing here?" And he was like, "I need to talk to you." And she said, "And you won't accept my I can't reach you because you got me blocked." She goes, "Yeah, because I blocked you, meaning I don't want to talk to you." And he was like, "But Fatima, I just really need to talk to you. Look, I have cancer." And he tells her it's stage 4, and he really is trying. He don't have much time left to live, and so he really wants to make things right with people who he's done wrong. And he was like, "And you at the top of my list." And so she goes, "Fine." He was like, "Okay." He was like, "So can you meet me for dinner?" She goes, "No, but I'll meet you for coffee in the lobby at 4:30. And he goes, "Okay." And she goes over to her, walks over to her office, and she starts crying. I mean, so here's the thing. She was in love with this man. So, whether or not she pissed because of how he did her, she still don't want him to die or anything like that. So anyway, that's pretty much episode 3 and 4 of Zatima, season number 1. Let's get into the conversation. What did you guys think about these 2 episodes? What did you think about Belinda and how she was acting? Do you guys think that she was truly trying to look out for Fatima by coming on to Zach and then was going to run and tell him? Like, I would like to get into that discussion because I feel like she should have left it alone. It doesn't matter what her intention was because she had already told Fatima that she would drop it that earlier that day. And so to me, that was her kind of violating what she already told Fatima, which was that she would leave it alone. She would stop harping on the past and move on. And so whether or not she wanted to show Fatima who he is. You don't know who he is. Zach and her had sex one time, and he didn't talk to her no more. So you don't know somebody based off of that. And then what you do know off of him, she got from Karen. And why would you be listening? So here's the thing. You can't take everything an ex says about a dude to truth, right? To heart, because everybody has their perception. So you kind of can believe some of the stuff that Karen is saying, but not all. And just because you and her became cool because you went and told her that he slept with you, don't mean that you got all the information. Like, she still want to be with Zach. So why would she make him sound good? You know what I mean? Like, she don't want you to have him. She want him to be with her. So if she taints his reputation all the time, guess what? It leaves him with no one else and no one else to go to but Karen. And so anyway, tell me what you thought about that whole Belinda situation. I agree with Fatima. I wouldn't deal with her no more. You violated, because it's one thing to say, like, I just think we should keep an eye out on him. But the way and the level of seduction that she did to go over to his house, to her house, and like, your best friend moved in with this man. Like, she in a relationship with him. So she caring. So you are pushing your wants. That's what I think. I believe she was trying to push. She wanted Fatima's to see what she saw, but Fatima has already told her that, she's in this and she's going to try to see it out. And as of right now, he's not giving me a reason to believe him. And so it's like everybody was pushing, Belinda was pushing what she wanted, her will, onto Fatima. Regardless if Zach is a good dude or not, if Fatima wants to be with him, then that's her desire. Nobody can do anything. It's called respect. If this who you want to be with, got you. She grown. So anyway, tell me what you thought about that. Tell me what you thought about the way that Zach handled it. I love the way that he handled the situation. I loved how he cared for Fatima in that moment. Zach is somebody who want to have sex all the time, but he didn't make it about him. He cuddled her. He asked her, he wanted to hold her. He was like, what can I do? Like, he was very attentive to her, got up and made her breakfast the next day. You know what I'm saying? And had a conversation in the bed where he was like, we both, I'm gonna do better. And she was like, we both need to. And, they just had a really intimate moment without the sex, right? And I love that about their relationship. So let's get into the conversation. Once again, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.